So we were looking at this area, and I was scratching my head really to work out how we get around this area. And actually, now I've had a think about it and I've done some work on it, I realise it's actually not as difficult as I thought, believe it or not. So what I'll do is just isolate these areas here. So the problem really is these surfaces here, that this edge doesn't join up with this because it shouldn't do. They are separate. It's below the surface, and the little beveled surface that we have is what connects the two. But what we should have, maybe I need some other surfaces in there just to clarify. Let's take that one in as well. What I was sort of struggling to understand, let's go into markup. Or get my head round last time, was how this all connects up in here. So this is okay. It's just this bit, and I realised that what the problem in this area is that we've got a five-sided shape. We've got a shape that goes from here, that edge, and we're trying to connect from this edge here, and we're trying to connect up to here and across here. So that's the actual area that we're trying to fill in. And the problem with that is that we've got, it's not five-sided, this is four-sided, but the problem is that this, if we tried to put in a surface like this would be horrible. This corner's fine, these corners are fine. It's this corner here where we've got this coming down to 0. If you tried to put a surface in like that, it would just be horrendous. You wouldn't be able to do it. You'd end up with no control whatsoever of this shape, because you've got all the CVs coming together, and this is one of those surfaces that you should always avoid. So what we need to do, let's just take the shading off there, is we need to do something like this, where, and the reason that I put that surface in before, without really sort of thinking about it too carefully, was that if you put in a surface that's like this, that's sort of radial around this corner, then it's a great way of controlling that edge. So if I put in a blue line there, oh, I don't know what that picked up on. Oh, I'm going to pick up that edge. I'm just going to draw it freehand. So we've got that surface in there, down here, across here. Now the only thing is that the way I've ended that isn't quite right, so I think I need to take that up to there so that coincides with where the edge is that I really want. I want a flowing edge here, although it's a sort of theoretical edge which doesn't really feature in the surface as such, but we need them all to come together. So something like that. And what that means is that we've got a nice four-sided surface in here with complete control of that edge. And the problem is how do we connect this with what's going on in here? And so the solution to that is to put in another four-sided surface that goes along here and that lies underneath there. So we do something like this. So it joins up there and across here. Now we can't do that. We can't actually get this all to align by just keeping that as one big surface and this one, because you can't align that blue surface into the green surface. It's just not possible. And so you end up having to split that surface there, the blue surface there. So we end up with two surfaces there, but we start off with one, we've split it into two. And then the other thing is that the green surface, which isn't joined to this all the way along here, also needs to be split. So I'm not choosing quite exactly the same colours, but the green surface also needs to be split across that way so that we can then align it into that big surface there. Well, that was badly drawn. So that can align into that. The blue surface can align this way into here. And so all of our surfaces are then four-sided, and we avoid that really horrible corner which you just would not want. I'm now going to save that just so I've got record of that. And so I've actually made a model which is along those lines, which is this one. And let's take the mesh off there. Hide the CVs that we don't want to see. So if we take those surfaces there, so I've got that sort of arrangement. And so this surface is the one I said needed splitting. And if I put the CVs on that one, you can see how I've created that one. So this one connects with here. I know it's not quite aligned at the minute because I was messing around with it, but that's the essential idea. And when you look at the shading on it, it's not 100% perfect, but it's getting there. Take those out and look at that. That's essentially what I needed to do, was make that into one set of surfaces going through there. So we connect this one and we connect this one, and then the other surface just sits on top of it. So it's actually, when I got to this point, I thought actually that's quite simple. It's just getting there and getting your brain around what the problem is, which took me some time. But I'll go through the whole process of how we get from one to the other. So it's probably best to do that, because otherwise I'm jumping ahead and not showing you how to cope with these difficult areas. So I'm going to just create another layer, and I'm just going to put that there, and for some reason it doesn't always do that. It seems to jump after I've moved it for some reason. So I'm going to call that body 1, and then I'm going to just take the essential bit. So really it's this, that, and I will include that one into there, and then we'll take these things off. And got that thing called wheel arch. Again, I'll bring that up to there so that they're all in one spot. It doesn't update always. Let's see if that does. Maybe I just didn't. Yeah. I'll close that down and open it up again, see if it works. No. Sometimes moves it and sometimes doesn't move it, and I don't know why that is. Anyway, I'll just turn that off. The curves, I don't know where they live, that one there. And probably time to sort out my curves, because I can't remember which one's which. Let's just assign that one to that one. Something I need to do at some point. So I've got some curves on this surface there, which I just want to get rid of because I don't want those getting in the way. And then we'll bring in the mesh as well. So let's bring our sections in. So the main thing I'm trying to do is just connect these surfaces at the top end of here, first of all. And let's put some X sections on. So when I look at this area and we look at the sections, we've got this surface is quite close to the section here, and then I think the mesh itself actually rises up. When you look at the section on the mesh there, it's quite horizontal, and then it sort of kicks up, and I just want to get rid of that because I think that's just a bit of a blip in the mesh, to be honest, because when you get to here it's disappeared. So that doesn't really strike me as being a feature as such. It's just a sort of a bit of a blip in the bit of a mistake in the mesh, to be honest, that we just want to iron out. So these are the sort of things you have to make some decisions on these things. And the other thing I've noticed is if I take this surface here, so when you look at this, we've got this. I'm pretty certain this is G2 continuous at the minute. Yeah. So this is G2 continuous, and let's have a look at the CVs on that one. So we've got very low degree, really, considering the shape of this, that it goes all the way around this corner. And of course, when you align that with G2 on, it's going to affect this hull and this hull. So it's lifted this up, and it looks like, rather than just I mean, we could increase the degree, we could split this up and just push it down, but what will happen there is that this is probably going to introduce a bend into this surface, which we don't want. I think this whole area, you know, is very smooth on the mesh, and that's what we should be aiming for. And the reason it's kicking up is because of this main block surface, that if we untrim that and we look at the sections there, you can see the sections just carry on in a straight line, more or less. And so again, I need to modify this main block, and it's one of those decisions that you've got to, it's a difficult one, of course, because I know that, oh no, I'm going to have to change this main block again, which means I've got to align things, and the temptation is to think, well, rather than doing all that, why don't I just split it up? And if you split it up, once you split it up, it's really, there's no going back. You can't sort of join it up very effectively again if you needed to. And although it feels like it's painful because I need to then realign things, I haven't actually got that many things to realign to it. But it's much better to keep it as one block if you can. And so that's what I'm going to try and do. And so let's just take all of the CVs off. So this main block just needs a bit of fine tuning. Now, I don't want to make the same mistake I made before, where I picked that point up and this one didn't follow because I didn't have symmetry on. But I can see by the symmetry symbol, this time I'm going to be very aware that I don't want to break symmetry. So I've got symmetry on there. So when I start moving CVs around on this side, it's going to be across on the other side. It's always the problem when you're zoomed in somewhere and you just forget, which is what I did last time. So just to make sure, absolutely, if I pick that point, you can see that one like highlights in blue. So if I was to move that up and down, the blue one also moves. But it's the symbol that gives it away. And also the fact that it shows that it's got history by the color of it as well. So I want to push this down in this area. And I suppose what I should do is, just to get an idea, I'm just going to bring in that bonnet detail in there. There's also a surface in there which I think belongs to the wrong bit, so I'm going to just make that a bit more consistent. I'm going to put that surface into what I've called bonnet detail, just so I've got it all in the one spot. And then we'll go into surface on continuity and just have a look at that as we move these things around, so that I'll get some idea of how much I'm moving things by. So I need to, obviously this back edge I can't really change, because if I change the back edge, then I'm changing the center bit, which I don't want to do, because we did create this from a one curve, I seem to remember. So this point here, we should be able to move up and down in Z and see if we can get, and obviously all of this breaks. As soon as we do that, it all breaks, and we know that. So I'm going to move that down in Z. Let's just take the mouse sensitivity off. So I'm trying to get more of this sort of shape in here. Maybe what I also should do, so I'll take this, get rid of this curve on surface here, and I'm just going to realign that with history on this time. So G2 project Z history into this surface, and it's not quite aligned there, but that would be easily fixed. If I was to increase the degree, we can easily fix that, but I'm going to keep that as a low degree for the time being. Am I? No, I'll just increase it. I will increase it. It's just that if you want to modify these surfaces manually at any time, then you want a lower degree, and then the alignment is, because it's pretty much automatic, it doesn't really have too much of an impact. Sorry, I'm going to change my mind again, make that degree 3, and the reason being is because this is coming down here, so we've got history on here. So let me just go and modify this a bit more. Z direction. So you can see the purple surface there, the section's really coming down to the data much more. But the other thing that we can do on this surface here, we have got some other CVs that we can play with. So if we wanted to bring it even further down, we can actually play with these CVs here anyway. And that's why I thought I'd just reduce the degree a bit. Oh, miraculously, it's become curvature aligned now. But you know, we've got these CVs to play with. We'd have to look at how this goes around the corner, of course. And of course, the other thing is that this is going to be split. When I bring this edge down here, this is going to be split, and this is going to have to be aligned into that main block. So actually playing around with this is probably not the right thing to do at this point. It's probably a waste of time, to be honest. So let's have a look at these deviations here. So 1.3 mil, that's neither here nor there. It's not significant, and we can, you know, easily fix that. Likewise, there will be we'll have broken the continuity down the front end, I'm sure. So if I look at G2 there, that will be broken. So that's only 0.02 because we're doing the change right back here. The changes at the front are very small. These ones, obviously, they're still aligned, but once I align that in that direction, then we have to go around that whole area. But really, it's only a few edges to sort out. But the main concern is this area. We're only 1.3. If that was a concern, if we wanted to raise that up, we can always just move some of these CVs back up again. And it's just because it's the edge one that's having most impact in this area. So let's just do that a little bit. So if you wanted to make that a little bit less, you know, that's 0.6 now or something. You could do that if you wanted to. This big surface, I mean, it does look really weird in terms of CVs. In plan view, it's all nicely structured, but when we look at it in this, you know, in other views, the CVs go up and down quite a bit. Well, maybe not too bad, but you know, I've got that one going down there. I suppose, you know, strictly speaking, I should, you know, looking at those edge CVs there, I've got that sort of zigzagging, and obviously this one I did something really quite extreme on. If you're doing A class, you might go and worry about all of this, but in reality, we've created an enormous surface here, and in reality, the only bit of it being used is this bit in the middle. And but the beauty of having this big surface is that because it's extended in all directions, it does mean you can play with these CVs out here and see where the surface is going to go in a natural way. So I'm not too worried about where those CVs are. I mean, if I take that and just copy that, and let's move that up here, and what I'll do is just extend that inwards. So if we just did that and extend it into about there, so bring it back to the center, when you look at the CVs on this bit, which is effectively what we've got, then, you know, you can see some curve on those CVs, but they look very, very organized and absolutely fine, no problem with that. So if we'd split this up, trim converted it, you wouldn't see these CVs looking so extreme. But because it's a big surface, you're inevitably going to get some fairly extreme CVs going on. And the other thing that we ought to look at is how do the highlights look? And they are quite, you know, it's quite interesting how these highlights look because of the CVs going, you know, up in these areas. So we get these quite strange looking highlights, but again, all of this is cut out, so it's only this center bit really that we're concerned with. And because it's a big flattish surface, I'm not particularly bothered about that. Like I say, if it was A class, and then I'd probably, well, I definitely would be sort of looking at that maybe in more detail, but I don't think we need to worry too much about this. Right, so the other thing that we need to do, so we've got that sort of surface is a bit more, when we extend it, is a bit more in tune with the sections that are going on here. And again, I'm going to save that. The other thing that we need to do, we've got this surface and this surface. What I need to do with those is get that corner to be at the same point as here. And so this edge, you know, is a theoretical edge. It doesn't really show on the model. It's not an edge like this, which is a hard edge. It's just an edge that's going to join up one to the other. So really it doesn't matter too much exactly where that is. Let's take these things off. We don't need this lot on. So I'm going to go and I want to take these two surfaces now and have a look at those. So we'll put the CVs on there, and then we'll take the CVs off here just to make it a bit clearer what's going on. And I don't need the sections on for the time being. So all I'm going to do is none of this edge doesn't join up with this surface at all. So all I need to do really is to create a clean curve all the way across here to this point. So I'm just going to go into CV curves here, pick up on that curve on surface there, and we'll put this curve into this layer here. Then I'm just going to align that G2 into here. So that ends there, and we'll increase the degree. I never know why it does that, to be honest, because all I'm doing is aligning it in G2, and it really should have kept that CV where it is, but never mind. So we'll move that back to there. So actually that curve looks absolutely fine. So we now need to extend this. So we're just going to extend that, and then we're going to trim convert it. Also need to extend it in that direction. So have I got, yeah, I've done that correctly. So this one I can extend but pick up on this end point. So I'm using Control and Alt here along that curve until I get to the end. So it's actually at exactly the same point. Actually, having done that, I'm thinking, no, I don't want to do that, because I really want to neaten this up. So I might as well put in a straight line from this end. I mean, it doesn't actually matter. It's just, so because I wasn't quite in the view, it's given me a line which goes up straight up in Z, which I don't want. So let's get rid of that. So I'll just make sure I'm in the top view, and we do Control and then across to create this line this way. So first of all, trim convert only works when the curves go from one edge to the opposite edge. So trim convert to this curve would work, trim convert to that curve wouldn't work initially, and so we need to think about the order of doing these things. So trim convert, if I do project Z with this one, yeah, that's going to end up in the wrong layer because I'm in the wrong layer. Let's try and keep it in the right layer. So now I've trimmed that. This curve now will go from one opposite edge to the other, so we can do a trim convert in that sense. So by extending it and then doing a trim convert, I've basically not changed the shape of this surface at all. I will be changing the shape of the surface, but at the moment I'm not changing it. The other thing that I've fortunately done right here is that I've got, you see the curve on surface there, which is where the detail comes in. I've got this line crossing it, and actually that's what I needed to do. I need that line crossing it, because obviously if it's this side, then this wouldn't work, because I would then, well, I've been then changing the shape of this, and that wouldn't make any sense. So it has to cross this. I think when I did the other model, so if I just bring in the other one, I didn't quite do it. I won't do it in exactly the same way, I know. Actually, it's pretty much the same spot. You can see that green line there, but I did bring the whole curve in, and I did it consciously to do that. But in fact, it doesn't matter if the curve does what we're doing here. So let's just take that out. Okay. So now let's get rid of these curves. We don't need these. The other thing that we need to do is this surface, that one there, also needs extending. So let's just delete the history of it. So I'm just using Control Alt H, which is my delete history hotkey, and we want to extend this to the same point. And so I need to get rid of the curve on surface on the main block there, and then I'm going to put CVs on there so we can see what's going on. We always want to do this, and I can extend that way. And then we're going to do a trim convert on that one as well. So they're all coming together at the same point then. Now the first thing to do, I'm going to take that surface there and just template it. So I'm using Control T, which is my way of doing that, or you can go into display template up there. Yeah, the first thing I need to do is get this surface to join up with this, and so I've got to do that across this point here. So actually, having templated that, I need to untemplate it, and we're going to just put another straight line across. There's no reason for it not to be a straight line. I might as well just make it a straight line across there, and then we'll do a trim convert. I'm then going to divide that surface into 2 bits. So let's do a trim convert there to that line there. So this time I'm picking on both sides and I'm saying divide, and we get both of those surfaces in then. So hopefully this is all going to work out. So I'm going to just template that again. Now let's have a look at the sections here, because all I've done so far is just do lots of trim converting, and of course we'll be quite different to that surface because we've never managed to align this surface to here. We've never really done that at all, and so let's hope this works. So if I go into Object Edit and I say Align, so I'm going to just align it in G2 Project Z, and we'll need some blend on here. So I'm going to align that to this main block, put it in Z, and actually that's worked out quite nicely. So I can either put blend on. Well, there's a number of options. One option is just to say, well, let's just drop the degree, and I think that's probably the most sensible thing to do, because we just try and keep it as simple as possible. The other thing is, because I've done trim convert on this surface, I've ended up with degree 6 here. Probably not necessary. So again, every time you've got an opportunity to drop the degree, just do it, because it just means the model's simpler. When you then get into manually manipulating anything, everything works so much better. So that's actually given us a pretty good result. I think it's probably, this edge may need lifting when we start to put this surface in against it, but that's pretty good. And so now we've got, let me just go down this end. Now we've changed this main block, so we do need to make sure that we've got this aligned before we do anything else, because I'll forget about it otherwise. So let's put the CVs on here. So again, we've got a very simple solution here. Now I think we've got curve on surface there, so we can try, because sometimes it does work. If I say G2, and I'm just going to use edge, so I'm going to use the existing curve on surface and just see if we can align it that way to there, and we just want partial on, and we'll put vector in the Z direction, and that's worked perfectly well. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't align when it did before, then I would delete the curve on surface and use projected rather than edge. And I've got position influence of 0 on, so if you looked at that in top view, it means the CVs haven't moved in that top view. I suppose we should put the sections on just to make sure that everything's okay, but you know, we're slightly low on the data there, but I think that was something we did earlier on. I think that's probably when we were doing it going out this way, that we've ended up doing that, but that's not a problem. Bear in mind, we've only changed it by a microscopic amount anyway. So this will have, by aligning that this way, this will have now broken. So we then need to align this one. So this one is definitely an edge. It's not partial. It's going to be position influence of 1 because we want the CVs to join up exactly. And that should be a microscopic change. We can just go into proxy display and just check, but absolutely microscopic. And then we need to go I mean, I should go and just while I'm there, always good to do. You can never do too much checking. Now this one, I actually haven't got a surface there. This one won't have changed anyway, but so here we need to align that. So let's go into align, and because it's an edge to edge again, it's going to be, so let's make sure we pick up the right one. That's curve on surface on the main block. We don't want that. We want this edge here. And we just need to be careful with this one because you can see it's moving off in that direction there. And so we want skew on, but actually this one, when you put vector on of Z, it'll override that anyway. It gets rid of the skew, in fact, so we didn't, it's just that is the main thing there. So we just gone around that loop. It's just thinking of the logic of what's going to be broken when I change this, even though it's quite small. I'm not going to bother with the detail. We'll come back to that later. So this end shouldn't be affected, but again, it's just as well to check, even if we're absolutely certain, because the number of times I've been absolutely certain of something and then checked it and thought, oh, okay, it wasn't what I was expecting. This end won't be aligned. You can see it's got a gap of 8 mil, and it's quite dramatic because we've pulled this down substantially. We've never actually aligned this to anything. This is another surface which is completely imaginary in the whole of this area. None of that is actually going to be used. We're only going to use this bit, but by bringing everything together, making these surfaces big, it just means there's going to be a consistency that we should get much better highlights going through. And a continuity of surfaces. So this one here, let's make that aligned as well. So this is going to be an edge. And again, it would be worth putting vector of Z on, just to make sure that we're only changing in the Z direction. Now that doesn't look so clever. So let's go into blending. And I'm going to pick up the center point there, just to make it blend as much as possible. It looks to me as though the S is a bit. It might not be too significant. Looking at the sections, you know, they're pretty close to the mesh. And bearing in mind we're only having that little tiny edge piece, maybe it's not important. Let's go into here, and I'm going to just trim that whole surface out, which may or may not work. You can see some pink spots appearing there, so we've got to be careful about what we're actually trimming to here, which is difficult to see with all these sections on again. So let's take the sections off. Let's just isolate that and see what we've got. Okay, so I think I've made a little bit of an error here in the positioning. Yeah, what I've done wrong is the position of that is wrong, because it should be where that crosses over. We need to bring this up to here, and what that will mean is the templated surface also comes to this point, because otherwise we've got a mismatch from here to the main block, so that doesn't actually make any sense. But it's not the end of the world. So let's lost my surface continuity here, just as well to put those things in. So I'm going to just extend this a bit further this way, and also I'll get rid of this curve on surface because it only gets to this point, and I don't want that left behind. So I'm going to just extend this backwards a bit or forwards that way, and we'll come into here. So I'm using Control and Alt on the intersect itself, or the curve on surface itself rather, and you can see there's a little pink spot there where it crosses the existing edge. So if I just drag and snap to that point, that's exactly where we want it to be. So now we can go into surface edit and trim convert that back to that line. Now there's a pink spot there as well, so if I put extend on and selected, we'll get this arrow which enables us to then do a trim convert that way. So now we're crossing the correct point, so this will be connected to here, and this will all make a lot more sense now, apart from this templated surface which we will need to extend out a little bit. But let's deal with this first. So let's go into object, edit, align, So G2 project in the Z direction, so that one onto this surface. And so because it is a bigger edge this time, don't want blend on, just want to pick up those 3 points. So you've got to be so vigilant on all of this, I know. So this doesn't quite align, but it's 0.001, so we should be able to just get away with increasing the degree in the whichever direction that's in, which is always difficult to see. So I'll just make that degree 4, and then we can get this to align again. So this one is going to be an edge, and I'll just make that vector Z. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to put blend on just to pick up that hull as well. So it sort of rises up here, but it's inevitable that it's going to do something like that, because we're trying to align it here, and then it's a different shape, so it's going to have to be flatter here than this one, that's for sure. So let's just see if we can now trim that center surface. So I've got trim on. So now we've got green, 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 green. It should be okay. Let's shade that up. Yeah. So we've now got that. So let's just have a look at the highlights on that, see what they look like. And so there's a bit of a wobble going on in here. This looks all nice and smooth. That transitions through there okay. Let's put horizontal, vertical, because this is a great way of seeing the transition between surfaces. So that looks pretty smooth. It's changing direction, but not too dramatically. That looks okay. And then I like to just put that one on just to get more of a feel for what it might be in reality. So I think the main problem area is just down here. So I think this just needs a little bit of fine tuning. So let's bring everything back. Let's bring our mesh back. Now we have got surfaces hanging off this, but again, that's no problem. We just have to realign those if necessary. And let's have a look at the sections through here as well. So I think the important one is the Y sections probably. So there's quite a lot of freedom to move this around. We're not absolutely bang on the data there, but we want to make this a bit smoother than this. And you can see, you know, a lot of this you can see in the CVs. First of all, let's just see if we can reduce, because we're now going to be manually moving things around. We want to reduce the degree if we can. So let's have a look at that. Let's just see what happens if I just drop the degree that way. I don't know whether we can get away with that. It's not bad. Well, it's okay on that end. Obviously 2 is too far, but 3 is okay apart from this bit. Now, because this is a higher degree than that one, and this will need the high degree to align in this end, it would make sense to align this that way rather than the other way around. And so we can keep that low degree, and we know that it's aligned at that end, so that's good. So let's go into align, and this time we want history on, so I'm going to put align that way. I've got blend on, so it's picking up that middle hull there, and let's see if we can improve this. So one of the other tools that we can use here, I can see in the CVs that you come along here and then it inevitably flattens out, but you know, there's some room for maneuver in here. One of the other things that we could do, of course, is reduce the degree this way. That's another possibility. And strangely enough, no, I suppose it's not strange actually. If I make that degree 5, so the angle has broken a little bit, but degree 5 is enough. Let's do that. Rather than doing that, we can go into, there's a function called rebuild surface. So we normally pick that surface and then just drop the degree. That's what I've been doing a lot of. But if you wanted to rebuild that and keep the original and just compare the new one with the old one, this is a way of doing it. So you can go into rebuild and then we can modify the degree and the number of spans. So if I just say go, you can see what we've got there. We've got, at the moment it says degree 7 and 1 span, but if I say make that 5 and we'll make this the same as the original, which is 3, what this does is it just shows you the deviation between the new one and the original one. You can see that by dropping the degree to 5, it's only 0.028, so it's nothing. If I make that, let's make it 2 and see what we get. So that's obviously going to be too far, but because we can't then align it anyway. But that says 2.4. When I say 3, actually the maximum is only 0.5, which is quite small. I'm just going to make that 4, and it says 0.4, the difference there. So actually I can get rid of keep originals now, and we've got a new surface which is pretty much the same as the old one, but 0.4 of a mil difference. But now we've greatly reduced the number of CVs that we have to deal with. Obviously we need to align it again because it doesn't know anything about that sort of thing. So I'm going to align that this way. This is where it might fall down actually, because of course it lifts that center bit up. So maybe I should have made it degree 5. I'll keep it as degree 5, but it's worth trying, you know, these things to see whether we can reduce the degree at every stage. So this one here, I'm going to align in with history on, and I should put blend on. You just got to decide whether to put blend on or not. Depends on what it does to the center bit. But if you look at these CVs here, the edge looks okay, I think. It's these center ones. They come along and then they go very straight and then they change angle again. So if we could just soften that a little bit, I think that would help. But the other thing that we can do is put curvature going this way. So which way that's going to be is anybody's guess. So you can see the curvature is also showing us the same thing, that it's quite tight here, whether, you know, it's flat at this end because we've got fairly flat, those CVs are almost in a straight line, and then it flattens off a lot, and then it doesn't join up very nicely at this point. It's gone very flat and then it's suddenly increases. The edge doesn't look too bad, that could be improved, and the edges are always the first thing to do. That edge also has gotten very flat, so we want to modify these edges and see what we get. Let me just save this again. So I'm now going to go into moving individual points around. So like I said, I'm going to move the edges first. We've got history on this line here, and so I'm going to move that one. I'm going to see if moving that up and down has a good effect. Maybe slow it down a little bit by putting mouse sensitivity on. So we're ideally looking for G3 continuity. In other words, you know, this flowing through there. Now, it's not just that point, of course. We could also move. We may be able to move, you know, I'm using shift here to pick additional points, and then we can move them all up together, because I'm trying to make this a bit more uniform, that curvature there. I'm not looking at the sections, as you can see. Do something like that, and then maybe you just got to play around with the points and see what you can do. Obviously, we could also, what is useful is to increase the scale here. So if I use Alt in that box there, you can gradually increase the scale just to see it in more detail. You don't want the scale too big, because all of this, the curvatures then overlap each other and it gets very difficult to see. But so this is getting a bit twitchy, so increase the mouse sensitivity again, slow it down a bit. Something like that looks much better. It's more equal curvature in that direction. I should put some sections on just so I make sure that I'm not going too far off the data. And then we'll work on this edge as well. I mean, I could put PMOD on, but it's sort of, because this is so different in the middle, it probably doesn't really matter too much. So again, I'm just trying to get the curvature there looks quite okay. It's gradually increasing. It was just that transition to try and get the more G3 across there. I mean, of course, you can just align it in G3, but you find that sometimes that it's sort of better. I find it's better not to do that straight away, because it's sometimes it'll throw out the fourth hull and can be quite difficult to work with then. So I do prefer to do it manually, and then maybe make it G3 if I really want that later on, using the align function. So again, this one's too rounded here. It's too tight here, and then flat here. So let's pick up those 3 CVs there, and I'm just going to lift them all up. I mean, having dropped a degree this way to 3, it does make it more difficult because we've got more CVs across this way. So I'm going to see if we can drop that down to 2. And I know it breaks it here, but when you look at the shape of it, it's close enough to the degree 3 that we can fix this manually and then realign that, and that's a better way of doing it, to be honest. So now I've only got 3 CVs to deal with for the time being. So because it just gets too complicated when there's higher degree. So we can then see what that's doing on those curvatures there. I should take the CVs off here though. You have to be careful when you take CVs off, of course. And I've taken the CVs off both of them, haven't I, which I didn't want to do. So I want the CVs on there just so I can pick that easier. But you've got to be conscious that the CVs are changing on here, and we don't know how they're changing because I'm not looking at them. So of course, you can go on for a very long time manipulating CVs, and let's just have a look at those CVs, just check nothing terrible has happened to them, but they look fine. So it's just this alignment here, and we just need to bring that back in. So let's go into there and align that, and that's G2 edge. I don't want blending on because I don't want to affect these CVs that we've carefully modified, and I just want to increase the degree, and I don't want history on. I don't want things changing unexpectedly unless I'm in control of it. I don't want that happening. So I think that's certainly CV wise that looks better, and curvature wise. So let's take the mesh off. Just have a look at the highlights again. So what's going on in here is we've got this is the highlights relative to the Y direction. So it's quite complicated what's going on in here. Let's look at them in the X direction, try to understand what's happening here, and look at the continuity between the surfaces. So it's continuous. It's just quite a strange sort of set of highlights. And maybe what we need to do here is have a look at the curvature going the other way. So let's take the other one off, that one there. And so what's happening here is we've actually got this is the shape it is. It's saying that it's flattish here and it's accelerating towards that outside edge, which is what we expect. The front is fairly uniform, and then in the middle it goes a bit weird, and so we need to sort that out. I'm just trying to understand what's going on here. So it's gone very flat across that area. So we really, when you look at this section here, this is also doing what this one's doing. So it's flattish in the inside and then tightening up on the outside edge. But when we get into here, it's actually inflected. So it's actually got a dip in it, which we don't want. I don't think we want. Let's have a look at the mesh. Don't think we wanted that. Maybe we do want it. Depends what the mesh is telling us. No, we definitely don't want that. It should be all going the same way. It does look as though this probably isn't quite right here, to be honest. Unfortunately, I hadn't spotted that one before. Let me have a look into the other surfaces that we've got going on here. That surface there. Yeah, I think the problem is that this is all a bit high up, and that we actually need to curve this more this way, but it's also got to join up with all of this lot. So it's quite flat. I mean, the section on the mesh, obviously this bit here is from that the side detail that washes out, but what we're trying to follow is this section here, and actually looking at it now, we're not really following that at all. This needs to come down significantly here. So I think I'm going to leave that bit because trying to sort this area out, and I need to come back to that and work out how to tackle that. I think that it's probably all to do with where I'm washing this out, that I've put in this constant surface across the front, and maybe that needs to come a bit further forward so that we are closer to the data here. I know there's some other surfaces to match up, to connect up here, but I think actually this whole edge needs to come down here a bit further to make that work properly. Right, so in this area here, let's take that off. So we've got this template here, so let's pick that and we'll untemplate that now. So we've got all of this aligned here. Let's just take those. That wasn't an area I was expecting to be looking at, to be honest, but that's what happens, is that you work on one area and then you get back to something you thought was all fixed and, oh, no, that doesn't work. Right. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So let's bring in this. So we had this common surface, this sort of central surface, which is, and this one here, I think I've got a copy of there, which I need to get rid of. So let's put that into body 1. So let me get rid of that one. That was just a copy of that one. So this is our central surface. So we're going to hang these surfaces off going that way. We're going to hang the surfaces going rearward off the other end of that. And so we need to make sure that this edge is in the correct place. So we've got this surface as well. Let me put that in there. Now we sort of, I put that in, and it was, you can see it's a very, very simple surface. It's only degree 2 going that way. And so we need to, and you can see the inner edge doesn't actually align with those edges there. So we need to make that more consistent with what's going on around there. So we could go into curves, and we can put a curve on from here to here. So what I'm going to do is trim convert this one, and I'm going to trim convert this one, and this is where they're going to join up in the middle. And so I need to put that curve in. I think I did have a curve along this edge, but it's probably out of date anyway. So I'm going to make that degree 5 and just align that to what we've got on either side. So that curve into there, and we'll do that on there as well. And so that's an approximation of what was on these two surfaces here. And then we can go and align this surface to this curve. And we'll need to make that, it's only G0, of course, because it's a curve. And I'll make it, if I go position influencer 1, it's going to pick up on the CV spacing of that curve, which is fine, because it knocks out that CV there. But what we can do with that is we could say blend, and then we can put we put blend across the whole surface, so all the way to the far side, and then we drop the blend factor down to 0, and it effectively moves all those center CVs across that way. Let me just take blend off for a minute. So it does actually change the section there a bit. So maybe I won't do that. So maybe I'll just go for position influence of 0, keep that CV where it is, and then we'll increase the degree to 5. So although the spacing is not exactly the same as the curve, it's actually got position alignment anyway in that case. Yeah, it has to be 5 to align to that. I mean, we might come back and change that, of course, but. And so now I want to trim convert these this surface here. So let's go into trim convert, project in the Z direction, that one there. So we've now got something to align to. So this will be interesting to see whether this aligns, and it's inevitably going to throw it out a bit. So we'll do edge, we're going to do vector in the Z direction of this one, and it's going to be a partial edge. So I'm looking at the sections there, and if I just drop that back down to G0, so it does move it quite substantially. And so what we could do there is to, once again, because we've put this little surface in there, but it was just based on those local sections, and which is a bit, it's really not taking into account all of the data around it. So we ought to really extend that and see what happens. It actually behaves itself pretty well. I think maybe I did, I can't remember now whether I extended that before, but the fact that those CVs behaved themselves quite well is a sign that I must have extended that before, I think, to get that to work. Now we're not going to, we've got these features in here which we're going to build as separate surfaces, but here we're building it as one surface, and it's getting from one to the other is the tricky bit in these sort of areas. So I'm just going to save that. So what we need to do here is to get this center surface just to start getting, it needs to have a hint of this shape, this concave area, but it won't absolutely get to that shape because it can't, it's too complicated. But we ought to try and get a hint of that in there. And I think the only way we can do that is we're going to have to increase the degree by the looks of things. So I think it's in the other direction. I'm not sure whether we can do that, but let's see if we can. So I'll make that degree 7. If I bring this point down in the Z direction, yeah, we probably can't do it really because we're going to, if I bring this point down, it's going to impact on this shape here. So I don't know whether there's much more I can do with that as it is. I think what we need to do then is to, I will keep this as an oversized surface, and then I'll just go back to aligning this other surface to it. So let's go into there. So where we might need to split these surfaces up and add these little additional surfaces at a later stage. So I want to project that in the Z direction. Now, surprisingly, I'm quite surprised that that didn't actually align very well at all, because it's pretty much the same as aligning to the edge, which is what I did before. And so I'm going to revert that. So we'll take this back. So I'm going to just extend that back to that point. Maybe I'll change the edge a bit. I suppose I've actually increased the degree, which that's probably why it didn't align properly. So let's align that with edge on vector Z, and we'll do that partial. Oh yeah, once again it's not aligning like it was before because I've changed that surface slightly, which I didn't really want to do. But we could try changing the position influence up to 1. but of course that's moving the CVs across there, and that's too much. Or I could just make that degree 4 and then change the position influence. Now let's take vector off then. Well, I'm surprised that it's so far out. It just doesn't want to do it. So I'm just going to leave it as degree 3 and accept the fact that it doesn't actually quite align at the minute. I'll sort that out later. I know I keep saying that. So this area here, more importantly, is what do we do here? So we've got, let's just take the sections off just to clarify what's going on here. So we've got these overlapping surfaces. We've got this one, which is a radial surface going around there, and we'll put the CVs on there. And we've got this one here. So the way that we've got to connect that, actually I've got to do a change on this anyway. So to connect this up, we've got to split it across here. But the other thing we've got to do is make sure that this corner ends at this same point. Otherwise this is not going to work. So one thing we could do here is we could, I could just do a P mod, I suppose, on that. Another thing I could do is if I go into duplicate without interactive on and go and do that, and then I can stretch that, which is under here. So let's stretch that to this point here. So it's basically the same shape, and then we can do a surface. We can do an align on that one. There's always more than one way of doing everything in Alias. So we align that, not partial. We want position influence of 1 on, so the CVs join up exactly, and then we'll put blend on across the whole surface there. With a blend, you notice blend factor of 0 pulls them too far, so you always want a blend factor of 1. If you've got one edge fixed and you're trying to pull it to another edge, put blend factor of 1 on, and then that'll make them more equally spaced across there. Now that diagnostic there is referring to this block, not this one. And so what we need to do there is just to make sure that we're picking the right thing, and I will pick that surface again. We just need to make sure that we're aligning that to there, because if we look at that, that will definitely not be aligned, as you can see. So we want to go into object edit and align that. G2 edge vector and position influence of 1 does it. And when you go back to 0, so that's where the original CVs are, it's not position matched. If you make it 1, of course it moves the CVs, but because it's going around this corner, it doesn't make any difference. You can see that still looks perfectly fine in terms of a pattern of CVs. So you can play around with these numbers. Sometimes you find that you don't have to quite get it to 1, or in some cases you find even 0.1 or something might fix it. But if you don't want to move the CVs too much, but here I don't care, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to see if, having changed that surface slightly, because this edge has changed, I'm just going to see if I try and align that to that edge, whether this will actually be any better than it was before. So I need this, in this case I do need vector Z on, absolutely, and you can see it still doesn't align properly with that degree on, but I'm going to keep the degree low deliberately because I'm probably going to want to modify this. Oh, the other thing I'm going to do is split this, so we're actually going to end up with a new surface anyway. So now I want to split this across here, and so we're going to detach. So this is going to throw all the diagnostics as well, because now I'm splitting it up into 2. So now I'm doing Control Alt along this edge, and I just drag that along there, and it doesn't actually do what I always expect it to do. I always expect it to pick up the intersect, but it doesn't in this case. So if you go into construction, put a point on there, then it picks up the intersect, and then we can go back to Object Edit, Detach, and do this again. And then I can just press Control to get that to detach exactly the spot I want. Just get rid of that point. So let me get rid of this curve, don't need that either. So we've got these surfaces underlying, in this area at least, we know that they're aligned. That's okay. So we now need to align this to that surface. So I'm going to align that to project Z onto that surface there. And inevitably it throws this out, and but it is a fairly small distance there. We could see if we can just around here, we can see if we can drop the degree again. It's just worth doing at every stage, I think. Let's go into curve edit. It sort of seems like it's adding more work, but it long term it's not. So I'm putting the curve on there, and the reason being that I just want to see whether when I change this, how much it's changing. So if I drop the degree of this, so let's see if we can drop it, of course. No, we can't drop it. So immediately I drop it, it goes to a bigger gap anyway. So that was a waste of time, but it's never a waste of time, of course, because we need to find these things out. So I've opened up a gap here between this surface and this one. So now let's go into object edit, and I'm going to align this, and I'm going to align it, make sure I'm aligning to the right thing. Not that it should make much difference. So I've got edge on, I want vector on, so it just moves it in and out in the Z direction. And of course it breaks it here. But because we were dangerously close to being curvature aligned before, let's just try doing G1 only, and then we can analyze whether G2 is achieved, which it is, which is great. And so it saves manually having to move anything or anything like that. So let's take these CVs off. So I've now trimmed this out. So we've now got a complete area there. Now, whether this is any good is another question, because obviously I've just been aligning things. What I no idea about is whether any of that's any good. First of all, you know, we need to check against the sections. So section wise, it looks all right. It's probably a little bit high there, but I think we can live with that. We can lose that around the corner, hopefully. The other thing, of course, that we want to look at is we can look at the curvatures. So let's look at that one. That looks okay. Looks a bit weird in there. I don't think that's. I don't know whether that's just the graphics or whether that's. It might be just the angle of the fact that that's. I mean, we did do a bit of a weird movement on that CV up there, so whether that's causing that problem, that always looks weird from that direction. I think it's just the nature of that surface. It's quite a complicated shape. So we want to look at the continuity there across that boundary. That looks pretty smooth. It goes a bit weird there. I think that's not quite right. It's sort of going that way and then comes back on itself. So the thing is with this area, obviously it's quite complicated, and it may be that we need to modify this surface because we can't, because this is aligned to that. This is really determined entirely by that surface. So it's only by changing that surface that we're going to be able to change this surface. We can't just change this surface. You know, the temptation might be to bump up the degree of this, and then just we got more CVs to play with. But all you'll end up doing is creating more lumps and bumps. So the only solution will be to fix this area, to make that better, is to fix that surface. Something else that we can look at as well, which is super critical, is if you go into the sections and we go X on X sections there, we can put curvature on. So you can put the curvature combs on. You can't see anything at the minute. You have to go into the function and change the scales, and then we can change those scales. I've actually got this on everything, haven't I? So I don't really want that. I just do the bits that I want. So maybe those surfaces there. Otherwise, you could just get so many lines everywhere. Even so, that center one, maybe I shouldn't pick that one, but we'll find out. So you can change this curvature scale going across that way. So actually that looks pretty good. I mean, apart from the step here, which this is just because this is not aligned, but that looks actually much better than I thought it was going to be. So this sort of transition here, you know, that you could say that this should be a bit softer, but again, it's entirely down to this underlying surface. We can't get that we can't get that softer on this surface without changing this surface, because this surface is the one that controls this. This is the thing that we're aligning to. But I'd be happy. I'm happy with that. Obviously, we can do that in the Y direction as well. So we can put on Y curvature. So it's that comb thing at the end, and again we can increase this curvature that way. So this, I think this is a complicated area. Again, there's some inflection going on here, but what that's saying is that this is all convex, and as we go around the corner it becomes concave. But that's okay. This is all continuous, as you'd expect, because it says so on the diagnostics there. So actually that's not too bad. But there's definitely something not quite right about the transition to here. But this is not aligned at the minute, so I need to align that. So let's do G2 on that one. And I won't put blending on, I don't think. I'll just put history on there. So in order to improve this, well, the other thing that we can do here is we can look at the curvatures going around this way, whichever way that is. That was a good guess. So this is the problem that we're getting. I can see that in the curvatures now, that this starts off quite rounded, it flattens off, it actually crosses over, which we don't want, because that means we've got a hollow in there, and then it inevitably becomes tighter there. So this is where the problem is. So let's see if we can fix that. So let's go into here. So we got to untrim that. Let me just save this. See if we can get this done. So we need the CVs on here. So all we've done with this surface here really is we aligned it. We didn't bother with this outside edge. We haven't really looked at that at all. I'm going to delete the curve on surface there because I want to reproject it. And obviously this surface is also going to change. So we ought to put, I mean, this surface I always thought was a bit strange, and looking at it again, this does look as though it carries on too straight, maybe for too long, and maybe that's all part of the same problem. Let's just align that. So I've got history on there as well. So when we change this surface, I want all of this to update so we can see what's going on. So if I just do that one with project on, it doesn't matter if we don't get 100% alignment. If things break a little bit, it doesn't matter, because we're just trying to rough this in to get this to work, hopefully. And so what I'm going to try and do, well, first of all, I'm going to increase the scale on there because I can't really see that too clearly what's going on. And then we will take the CVs off there temporarily, just so we can see these CVs more clearly. And maybe I'll leave the mesh off and just see what we can do. So I'm just going to move some CVs around. I'll put some mass sensitivity on. Let's see what happens. It's just a question of experimenting. If I move that point down, what happens? So we're trying to get a bit more roundness in there, so it would make sense to bring this down a bit. And then as we do that, you can see that the flatness gets pushed towards this end. I'm not, this bit in the middle is controlled by more than this point here, of course. So it's going to be multiple points that we need to move. I mean, it might be the whole edge, you know, that we need to move up and down. You just have to play around with them, play around the CVs, and maybe slow this down a bit as well, a bit more. If it's a bit too twitchy, then you just have to slow it down a more. Now that doesn't seem to have any effect, and why is that? Why does that one want to not move, that one? I'm just not sure whether that's moving. It should be moving. Yeah, so if I put it on 1, you can see it moving. So let's make that 50 again. Yeah, so I think by raising this area up, that's also helping a little bit, but I just want to make sure that this isn't doing anything crazy. So that one, I'm looking more at the edge than anything else there. Obviously, I can't pick these CVs because they're entirely dependent on this surface here. So everything's dependent on everything else here. This is why it's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. And it's also why I modified this surface, because if you didn't modify that surface, then you don't stand any chance of doing this. You know, you could go back to that surface and start modifying that surface and seeing what happens. You've got to have history on everything, then it gets quite complicated to get your head around. I mean, that edge looks a bit better because at least it's not inflecting now. And I don't suppose for 1 minute it'll ever be 100% perfect. And so now I've got that edge sort of. Just want to improve that. That sort of looks a bit better in there. So let's have a look at that. I'm just going to shade that up. I've got overlapping surfaces there, so you know, in terms of continuity, that looks better. Let's have a look at that. Oh, that looks much better in that direction. Let's have a look at it in the X direction. So there's going to be some these sort of effects here. That is just because it does inflect from certain angles, that line will be inflecting from certain directions. But I think that looks a lot better. It was just all over the place before. I mean, I can see that this transition here, you know, may not be 100% perfect. This looks very weird. I'm going to create curves on. I think it's just the graphics. So the curves look absolutely fine. If the curves look fine, then there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the graphics, and it's probably because I've got, you know, fast tessellation on, rather than the choice is accurate. It tends to be very, very slow when you do that, and you can change the tolerance right down. But actually, if you put the curves on and you can't see a problem in the curves, then there isn't a problem. You know, if I was going to analyze that even further, then I'd put curvatures going on the sections going through that area and just check that out completely. But I think that's okay. So let's go into. So the only thing we need to fix is this now. So this was. Let me take the CVs off there. So this is that one. That's the alignment of that surface into there. So I'm hoping that if I go, first of all, because I've got history on things, if I try and align something to something else in that area, it's likely to throw something else out. So I need to delete all of the history there before I do that. And then we want to isolate that surface and that surface and that surface. And then we'll trim this one there so we can see clearly what's going on. And then we can go into Object Edit, Align, G2, Edge, Vector Z, onto there, and it's done it. This time it went straight in with G2, whereas before I had to put G1 on and then check it, and it was okay. So that's good. That's good. Let's just have a final look at what this looks like, because this is always the nicest view in a sense, because it doesn't show everything in too much detail. Just gives you an impression that it's actually not as bad as you think it is, because sometimes you can start looking at highlights and you just get paranoid about everything being terrible, and you just never get any work done that way.